Last week we had our introduction on what psychological well-being is all about. We dealt on the 4 factors, main 4 domain, and how we have to integrate all the 4 domain and stay healthy. Okay, now we are gradually moving on to little more details about what's going on in us. Okay, so this week and the following week we'll be handling on thoughts. Okay, because we all know thinking is very important, and as a man thinketh, so is he. So we know how important thoughts is in our life, and we also know our thoughts defines who we are, and our actions are just byproduct of our thoughts. Okay, most of us, given this current situation of this pandemic situation, getting locked down and all this online classes, we don't know what's going to happen in the future, all uncertainties. We are right now in a situation where everything is uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen next. Uncertain, unpredictable. Okay, so given this situation, anxiety is very, very common, and to say it has become a norm of people. Feeling anxious has become a norm, and like everyone feel anxious, everyone are worried, everyone are overthinking. Somewhere, it has become a part and parcel of our life, and we have also accommodated anxious thoughts in our life. And we have learned to live with anxiety, worry, and overthinking. We are managing, we are managing everything. We are having overthinking, but at the same time we are trying to be optimally functional. That's when exactly we are all feeling stressed and worked up and burnt out. Okay, so today's webinar is going to focus on what anxiety is all about, how you can differentiate anxiety from fear, and what is the science of anxiety, what is actually going on in your brain through the anxious thoughts, and how you can come out of it. Okay, so this is all about today's webinar. So to give a main idea, or to say why this webinar is important, why we have to talk about anxiety, why we have to talk about anxious thoughts, is basically because anxious thoughts strangulates you or stops you from being productive. That's why we kept a topic as moving from anxious thought to productive actions, or from anxiety to action, is what we titled this webinar, basically because anxiety chokes your productivity. I've written here your energy, talent, time, creativity, opportunity to thrive, productivity, the immediacy, in the sense, the here and now. The right now, you will not be able to experience the present, the joy of living, the relationship, all the good things that you enjoy in your life, you will not really be enjoying. Okay, and about the relationship will be eaten by the anxious thoughts. That is the main reason we are working on this webinar. We have titled this webinar on anxiety, basically because it is important, it is serious. Anxious thoughts is serious. Okay, it has very dangerous impacts in your productivity, in your efficiency, in the trajectory of your success. Okay, so let's see what anxiety is all about. You want to know about anxiety. Anxiety is a kind of something we cannot really define it to be specific, because anxiety is at the same time, anxiety is at once a function of biology, philosophy, it's a action of body and mind. Okay, so it's a part and parcel of everything of you. And though you feel it, it is also measurable. And it is just not produced by nature. It's not that you are inward, your genetic inheritance, but it is also by nurture, the environment, how you grew up, and what the situation that you're encompassed with. So it's a psychological phenomena, it's a sociological phenomena. To be very simple, to put it in your language, in a computer term, it's both a hardware problem and a software problem. Let me make it very clear. So it's the hardware, that is your brain as such has a problem when you have anxious thoughts, and even in your mind you have a faulty thinking patterns. Okay, so it's a kind of collaboration, or it's intertwined. It's a kind of wired thing, that is anxiety. Given that as anxiety is a very common feeling, very, very common feeling, and we all feel it. We all would have undergone anxiety. We all would have undergone anxiety, anxious thought at some point in our life. It's a very, very common, fear, emotion that everyone feels. And the big thing is, anxious thought is least treated, or anxious thoughts are least brought to the attention of the professionals. That's a very important thing. We don't take, simply because anxious thoughts are not given much care, or we don't focus on it, we don't give importance to it. Okay, so anxiety is therefore, it's a range of emotion that serves positive functions as well. It just alerts us about something that is important. It tells us to move forward. It tells us to take action. Okay, there is also a bit of positive in it, but mostly, when the initial part is not taken a right step, it takes us to a different trajectory. It spoils our productivity. It strangulates us. Okay. Now let's see, what is the difference between anxiety and fear? We usually mix these two. We clearly don't know what is fear and what is anxiety. Okay, so fear is something if there is particular and determinate. If there is something there, say for example, you're walking in the night and you really see something, some sound from the bushes, or some slithering sound from the bushes, or you feel something, or you see something, in a vague thing like a rope or something, you get that reaction, that feeling, that is fear. But anxiety, to say, it has nothing in particular. It is indeterminate. It is indefinite. In general, there will be a kind of, for example, let me give this example. If I go for trekking in this mountain, there will be maybe there are many snakes in the mountain, so I'll not go to trekking. Okay, so that thought, that feeling is an anxious feeling. That is in general. You have some idea and you stop doing it. But fear is, you are on the path of trekking and you hear something, you feel something, or you tread upon something and you gripped with some emotion, that is fear. Okay, if you particularly see something, that is fear, or if there is something to it. But anxiety, there is not, there is something, there is nothing definite, nothing to be determined. Okay, but it is everywhere. You can feel it all over, but there is no root for it. Okay, so this is exactly what you have to know about anxiety and fear. That anxiety, that explanation really gives us a relief, because there is nothing called determinant. There is nothing danger actually existing. Okay, there is no any danger or threat that is actually existing. But there is something that has happened in your brain which is giving you a message that there is a danger existing. Okay, so that is all about anxiety. Let's see what actually happens in our brain. Okay, in science of anxiety. So there are three main parts involved in anxiety. Okay, so maybe a little bit of technical words, but I really want to understand. Don't get into details of the words, but a little bit of understanding you really need to have here, because this is exactly happens in your brain when you have anxious thoughts. See, anxious thoughts are something which is very repetitive. You think about certain things again and again, but There is no anything, if you look deep to it, there is no any cause, or there is no any determined factor for it. Okay, so what actually happens in your brain? Let me say that three part that is very, very important is your prefrontal, that is your frontal brain, your front thing, okay, which is a boss, we call it as boss, or the executive function. It takes us choices, okay, it helps you in making right decision, it rationalizes you to think clearly. Okay, this is your frontal brain, we call it as. You can see it in the image. And next is your amygdala. Okay, amygdala is something that's the seat of emotions. Okay, so that is the seat of emotion. It reacts very fast compared to your prefrontal area. So prefrontal area gets the message after it comes to amygdala. Okay, so that is the emotional seat. And another person that you have to, another important area that you have to remember about your brain is the hippocampus, which is the memory unit. Okay, so that's simply three places. One is the center for logical thinking, another for emotions, another for memory. Okay, so prefrontal area, what it does is, that is the, it is something like the brain's boss with the brake. So the front brain, the frontal, has a brake, and it say, no, stop. Why are you reacting this way? Okay, there is no danger actually existing. There is no such situation actually existing. Why are you overthinking? You know, why don't you stop doing this? All these things comes from your front brain. Okay, for example, if you're thinking about your maybe your past failures, or something that it has to happen in the future, or you're thinking about something maybe about your placements in the future. Okay, maybe you're imagining a whole scenario, negative scenario for yourself. Your prefrontal brain, what it does is, when it comes to play, it says, you know, not necessarily this should happen this way. It always gives you option. It tells you there is always options. You can try it out. So it is otherwise called as optimistic brain, we call, because it gives you, you know, positive interpretations about certain things, some situations. But usually what happens is, this area gets strangulated, or it is not given proper circulation, when proper blood circulation, when you are filled with anxiety, when you're filled with emotions. Okay, so this part of the brain goes with less blood flow. So automatically this part of the brain doesn't work during your anxiety, during your anxious thoughts, during your anxiety. That is the main reason you are not productive. You will not come up with any answers. You will not come up with, you know, a solution. You will be thinking and thinking and thinking. You're ruminating. You'll be ruminating, but solution or answer, you won't come up to an answer, basically because this area, this break, or this optimistic brain, which gives you the cognitive interpretation, you know, there is a block, there is a choking that is happening for this area. Okay, so next part, the hippocampus, I told you, it is about memory saver. What it does is, anything that comes to your brain. So for example, if there is a situation, let me say, let's take this our current situation, coronavirus is there. So you are going out and you are wearing mask, you are keeping social distancing, you're doing all these things, but still, okay, there is an emotion that is there, that is going on, or a thought that is going on, that it is highly infectious, that you can get it through anything, you know. So you're very careful in touching, you are very careful in maneuvering with people and all these things. But this hippocampus, what it does is, it gets the memory alive during the current situation. For example, it brings to remembrance the news that you heard. It brings to remembrance like what happened to your friend last week. Maybe you would have heard your relative going through this infection. So this hippocampus, it brings to your remembrance what has happened related to this situation. Okay, so this is what is the work of this hippocampus. And here is our main, part, that is amygdala. I told you, the feeling part of the brain. It always tries to guard you, save you. Okay, it wants to keep you safe. So what it does is, the moment you go out, so let's take a scenario. In morning, you're planning to go out for shopping, 8 o'clock, you're planning to go. So with your frontal brain, you're deciding. So what you're taking, you're taking hand sanitizer with you, you're wearing the mask, and you clearly know social distancing, everything. So you are going to a shop, standing, maintaining the distance. Okay, so everything is fine. So till then, your frontal brain is properly functioning and you're going. Now what happens? All of a sudden, there comes a man who just hits you or crosses you, or just comes and gives you a handshake, or just there is disturbance in the situation. Immediately, your hippocampus brings out the memories. Okay, this is how it got spread for that person. This is how it spreads. All this information comes to play, and immediately amygdala, what it does is it triggers a cycle within you. It warns your body that there is a danger. So immediately it tries to, safeguard you. So while doing this process, what amygdala actually does is it stops communication with the frontal brain. If at all this amygdala would have asked the frontal brain, what should we do? This man touched me. The frontal brain would have given, that's okay, no problem. Maybe, you just apply your hand sanitizer, or, maybe go home, wash yourself, take bath, you'll be fine. But what happens? Amygdala, when it senses a danger, see, you have to be very clear here. There is no actual danger existing, but your amygdala is sensing danger based on the memory. So it's sensing a danger, and immediately what it does is it's giving a message that there is a danger, and it stops the communication to the frontal brain, which makes decision, which makes, which gives options. So that's exactly, that's when we fail in our reaction. That's when what happens is we don't get any clear picture about what is happening, or we don't worry about making solution. Immediately we have panic attacks, immediately we react. Either we may scold the person, saying like, we all know what's going on, why are you not wearing mask, or something like we yell at the other person, or immediately we leave the place, you go home, you flush yourself, do whatever. Okay, some obsessive thoughts may come into your brain, or you may do some rituals, you may wash your hands very repeatedly, or get into grip of anger, or whatever it is. Some emotion hangama will happen within you, basically because your connection to the frontal brain is stopped. Okay, so this is exactly what is happening in your brain every time that you encounter a anxious situation, or a situation that you are interpreting wrong. I can put it this way. Okay, so let me read this out for you. When we are in a calm and a safe state, our amygdala can communicate with the leader part of our brain, which is the frontal brain. Okay, I told you the boss, which has a brake. Okay, brain, to make good decisions. When we are in a negative emotional state, a negative emotional state, again, it is very subjective. Each one has their own negative emotional state. Okay, so I remember a person who came for counseling. She said for her, sitting under a fan is a negative emotional state, because she had a past experience where while she was sleeping under the fan fell down, but luckily it didn't hurt her, but that was a traumatic shock that she had. From then on, sitting under a fan, whenever she gets into a room which has fan, she won't feel comfortable. Okay, she won't feel comfortable. So imagine when such person comes to a room, she's already in a negative emotional state where the person may feel stressed, anxious, fearful. So what happens in our amygdala? What happens? The amygdala fires to warn us, saying, there is something danger here. The alarm will go in your brain. So immediately it loses its connection with the leader. That's why you cannot make clear decisions. That's why you lack productivity. That's why your anxiety will stop you from being productive. For that matter, anything. Okay, overthinking or repetitive of thoughts, or anything of that sort. If there is something which is not leading you to fruitful action, then that is under the anxious thoughts. Okay, so keep one thing very clear: anxious thoughts will not take you through fruitful actions, but it will stop your productivity. Okay, so now what we have to do: don't let your amygdala hijack your frontal brain, or let not your emotions hijack your thought process. Hope you're getting it. Don't let your emotional state hijack your thinking process, or your decision making, or your clear analysis, or your sober clarity in thinking. Okay, the problem is that your amygdala can't tell a stressful situation from a true emergency, and it can cause you react without thinking. So that is a problem. Amygdala doesn't know this is this is bad, this is the range is 0 to 1, 0 to 2. No, it doesn't know any range. It doesn't know which is stressful from emergency. So anything related to negative emotions immediately triggers you saying, stop, there's a danger. So immediately what happens? It stops communication to the thinking brain. Okay, so I would like to ask this question: have you ever done or said something that you regretted when you were angry? தமிழ்ல ரொம்ப அழகா ஒன்னு சொல்லுவாங்க, கோபக்காரனுக்கு புத்தி மட்டு அப்படிம்பாங்க. So it's simply this. It's simply this. They're explaining this. Okay, when there is, it's simply putting another way, the amygdala or the emotions have already hijacked your thinking. Okay, so that's exactly what I want you to know about anxiety, because these are the things that is happening right there, in your brain. It's happening every time you're anxious, every time that you're disturbed, every time that there is a deadline, every time that you have to face a person, if there is an assignment given, there is a deadline given, or there is a relationship issues that you're facing, or there is a breakup, or endeavors that is coming to you. If you feel some negativity, immediately this is exactly what is happening in your brain. Okay, so now we need to understand. So for us to come out of anxiety, first of all, we need to have a clear understanding of what anxiety is all about. Okay, so what are our perceptions? We need to have a clear perception about anxiety. So first and foremost thing is, anxiety by in itself is not bad. Okay, so it's basically it gives you a warning, or it pushes you to the deadline. Okay, basically what a normal thought or normal repetition of thoughts or normal emotion will do is, it triggers you to do something. Okay, that initial stage. So during that initial stage, what happens is, it is not bad, but you will feel uncomfortable. That's the initial stage, how it starts. Okay, so anxiety by in itself, when it emerges, it's not bad. Whenever your brain gives you a warning or senses a danger or tells there is an importance, you may not feel comfortable. Okay, or you feel uncomfortable. This is very common. Everyone goes through. See, for example, tomorrow there is a presentation. I will have an anxious thing going on in me, about my preparation. What actually that anxiety will do is, will help me to to revisit my presentation, or to prepare more, to be strong, and all these things. This is exactly what my thought my emotion will do. But what happens is, sometimes this I may not feel comfortable. The urge that is always coming in, that is the starting point of your anxiety. You have to be very clear where your anxiety starts. Okay. Normally what happens when there is an important thing coming up, there is an important relationship that is there, or important event coming there, your thought reminds you, your emotion reminds you that there is an important thing that is coming up. Work towards it. And you'll be working towards it. But if it goes a little beyond, and if there is a repetition of that thoughts for 2 or 3 times, and if your sleep is little disturbed, okay, what happens is, it may not affect your productivity initially, but definitely it will give you a feeling of discomfort. That is how it starts. Okay, so I would say, if at all, if someone here who is listening to this, if you are in that initial stage, it's easy to come out. Okay. And the next stage where it takes is, that's when anxiety becomes a disorder, or let me put it this way, anxiety becomes distressing. It goes beyond your threshold. When? First one, you feel in danger when you are safe. Or actually, to say it is difference between perceived and the actual safety. There is a spell typo error, I'm sorry about it. So difference between perceived and the actual safety. This is the next level of anxiety. See, most of us would have gone to this stage where you may be sensing of a sense of being in the edge all the time, when there is no actual danger is existing. So you may be perceiving something, but in reality, there is nothing. If at all, if something of that sort is going on in your mind, if you're gripped with some kind of emotional state where you're always in a kind of emotional state where there is an alarm of danger or fear, or, there is a kind of, overthinking and racing of thoughts and repetition of thoughts connected with your emotions, you have to stop and think. You have to pay really good attention to yourself right now, because you're already stepped from the initial level to a level where you have to take action. Okay, so that is, you feel in danger when you are already in a safe zone. You may be in a very safe hands. You may be in a very secure situation, but still there will be a kind of, insecurity, or you don't feel as safe. And next, when it interferes your normal function. For example, let us take the same corona thing that I've been talking about. So when anxiety becomes a distress, what happens is, though you have kept yourself, socially well distanced, you have wore mask, you used sanitizer, you did every measures that you can take, still there will be a kind of emotion that will be going on inside of you, a kind of thing that, somewhere that you are in the danger of getting infected. If that is there, then that is a warning sign. And second, it may interfere in your normal function, in the sense that emotion will keep you from going out. You will not go out even if there is a necessity. That is the impact of anxiety. Okay. And the third level is, the more you stop yourself. Okay, for example, and then the second point I have told you, it interferes with your normal function. For example, I do need some groceries, but because of the fear, because of this emotion, this thoughts, I'm not going and getting my grocery. So my normal function is getting affected. Okay, so my anxiety has already become a distress for me. So if I avoid going to shop, or if I avoid going and meeting people, even when it is needed, because of this emotional fear, what happens is anxiety grows. That is the third thing that you have to know about anxiety is, the more you avoid the exposure of the anxious situation or anxious circumstances, the anxiety grows. Keep this in mind. Very important point that you have to understand. The avoidance grows anxiety. It can be physical, it can be relational, it can be emotional. See, many times you may go meet people, but emotionally you may be avoiding. Emotionally, you don't want to get closer with people. Emotionally, you set boundaries, not healthy boundaries I'm talking about, but emotionally, if you are setting boundaries and if you always feel like, what if this person gets closer to me, or what if comes to you in here, then definitely your anxiety is going to grow. So avoidance is the enemy of anxiety. Understand? Or anxiety is something that nourishes, avoidance is something that nourishes your anxiety. The more you avoid the anxious situations or thoughts or, that feel, you are letting the anxiety to grow. Okay, so these are the perceptions. You have to have clarity in the perception. Many times what we think, if we avoid going out, if we avoid doing this, if we avoid exposing to people, if we avoid our relationship, I'll be safe. I'll be safe in the anxiety. Definitely that is how your brain feels. But more you feed your brain with this emotion, you are feeding the anxiety. Okay, so now let's move on to the anxiety cycle. What happens? Actually, the same thing, but I'm explaining to you in a different way. So there is a perceived danger. So you sense there is a danger. There is, danger in the sense, when I mean danger, it's not the actual danger that I'm talking about. It can be, intrusion in your privacy, in your personal space, or, people hurting you or manipulating you, or fear of getting infected, or anything for that matter. Okay, if you perceive anything, if you perceive danger, immediately in anxiety cycle, what happens is you try to avoid. You try not to do that. So once you avoid, what happens is there is a brief relief in your brain. Your brain feels, okay, I'm out of, I told you, remember, amygdala wants to keep you safe. So because you avoided the situation, amygdala tells you you're safe. Good. Okay. So that brief relief, what happens is, because your brain feels it's good, that you're safe, it tries to repeat the same situation. Anxiety grows. So this is the cycle. Whenever you sense there is a danger, when there is no actual danger, and you react to it by avoiding, your brain feels relief, and this relief is what will grow that anxiety. Okay, hope you understood this. So now, how to come out of this anxiety? How we can handle this anxiety? Okay, yes, I understood. So there is a cycle that is going on, and anxiety is growing in me. How should I? Exactly what you have to, where you have to work or attack is the action, or let me come to the cycle again, the avoidance place. Where exactly you have to break the chain is in the avoidance. You have to cut there. Okay, you have to attack the action of avoiding. Okay, don't avoid the anxious situation or circumstances or the person. How? I hope there is a problem. I think this. Okay. How you can do this? I really wanted to go a little deep in this because this helps you a lot. I'll be finishing. I'll be winding up soon. So this is my last slide. So, how to break the action phase or the avoidance phase. This is exactly what you have to do. When you are feeling anxious and you withdraw yourself, that is exactly what you have to break. Okay, how? First of all, make exposure a hierarchy. You have to make a hierarchy of how you are going to expose yourself to the same anxious, situation or circumstances or the thoughts. Okay, so you are not going to hide from the anxious thing. You're not going to run away. You're not going to avoid. Okay, you are going to expose yourself. This is exactly what you're going to do. You have to expose yourself And when you expose yourself, what happens is, definitely when you expose yourself, there won't be anything negative happening because there is no existing danger. So definitely no negative is going to happen. When there is no negative is going to happen, your brain is going to learn, yeah, there's no negative happen. So there's a new learning that you're giving to your brain. Once the brain gets the learning, your emotional muscles get strengthened. Your emotions get a new strength. Okay, a new pattern is created. And the more you repeat this, the more you expose yourself and tell your brain there is really no danger existing. It's all my perception. It's all my understanding. There is no, there are many people who think, so they, maybe, for example, they may present a paper, or they think what the other persons are thinking about. But the actual reality is the other person wouldn't have thought about you. They would have forgotten you long back. But you may be thinking about those thoughts, what you spoke and what the other person spoke and what the other person would be thinking about you. All these things would be ruminating. But now what you have to do is you have to stop and say, I'm not going to think about it now. And once you stop it, nothing is happening. And when you really see the person, and the person is talking to you very well. What you imagined, what you ruminated is not actually happening. Immediately your brain learns, okay, I was wrong. I was wrong in thinking that way. Okay, so that new learning is what you're going to give your brain by exposure. So make exposure clear. Okay, but do it in a very hierarchical way. Don't start with big steps. Okay, that is where many people fail. Don't flood yourself with the exposing thing. Start simple. Think about it first. Think about yourself exposing yourself to the anxious situation or circumstances or with the people or whatever. Okay, and then gradually move on in exposing yourself, and your emotional muscles will be strengthened only through that. And then next is change the rules. Change the rules from the old one to new one. Old one always says, there is a danger exists, if I do this, definitely I'm going to fail, or whatever that you have, the impressions, the perceptions about anxiety, you have to change it now. You have to set new rules. It is okay to feel anxious. It is okay to stay in that feeling. It is okay that I face it. So you have to set new rules for yourself, because avoidance would have given you a set of rules. Now you're going to break all the rules of the avoidance. For example, emotional avoidance. You would have set a limitation for friendships. You would have set limitations for people. So what you should do is you have to set a new rule in saying, so you have to set a limit. You have to set a new rule saying, I will do this. I can come out of these thoughts. But previous, your avoidance will say, no. If you go meet that person, definitely he is going to intrude in your personal space. That is what your previous thing will say. But now face it. Try meeting the person and talking with the person. What's going to happen? Face it. Set new rules for yourself, and then face the fear or the challenge the anxiety. This is the trick that you're going to use. You have to trick your own brain. Okay, you have to tell your brain, whenever your amygdala gives you a warning sign of danger, you're going to give the anxiety, amygdala response through exposure. Okay, so this is exactly how you have to handle anxiety. Definitely when you would have come across with many other steps of anxiety, but if you're not working at here, all other steps will be a failure. That's why always, any measures that you take for anxiety fails. There are so many stories, so many, instances that I've come across where the steps taken for anxiety always backfires, basically because they try fighting against anxiety through avoidance, through grounding. No, it won't work. Okay, so the more avoidances, the more your anxiety is. Okay, so have this very clear taken. So how you can come out is break the avoidance, come out of it, expose yourself, and prevent the response. Whenever you're exposing, definitely your body and your mind and emotions will have different challenges, coming up inside of you. Just set the rules strong and say that's okay to stay in this position. That's okay. Okay, just tell tell yourself, and stay there, and you will come out of it, because it's basically your brain will learn the cycle. Your brain will sense that there is no real danger existing. Once your brain realizes and understands that it is just a perceived danger and not a real danger, or perceived consequence or not a real consequence, it learns a new path of understanding. Okay, it sets new relationship patterns. It brings out with new emotional standards for yourself. Okay, hope you all understood what anxiety is, and what anxiety cycle is, and what happens in your brain, and how you can come out of it.